he starts turning red, and he goes, "No, man, I really can't breathe." And I'm like, "You're breathing. It's okay. Like, talk to me. You're all right. We're going to get you undressed and get you on the monitor." And then he starts tripoding. And I'm like, "That's not good." And he looks at, like, right. I'm like, "Oh no, this guy really can't breathe." And he goes, like, he leans 3 inches to my face, and he goes, "No, man, I really can't effing breathe." And I was like, "Okay, we're going to take care of you." And I mean, the spiral, all of a sudden, he's huffing and puffing, he's breathing. I will never forget it. He came in the door, his respiratory rate was 25, it shot up to 44 breaths per minute. He was tachycardic 150. He really was not breathing.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hey everybody, Kevin McFarland here from the Art of Emergency Nursing, and thank you for listening to the podcast. It has been a little while. I apologize for my absence. Things have been crazy, and it feels like 2021 and 2020 has just rolled right from one to the next. But here we are, we're here together again, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to listen to my podcast. I appreciate that you remember me, and I appreciate that you're here. I hope you and those around you are doing well this 2021. We are just coming off a pretty big storm here in Houston right now, so that's what's been on my mind lately. But I hope you and yours are warm and dry. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, please leave a rating and review for the show. That is how other people find this show. That is one of the ways other people find the show. The other way is from recommendations from you. So don't forget to recommend the show, if you would, to your friends, to your family, to your peers. We want them to listen to this show. More people that listen, the more people that find this show. So I appreciate you recommending us. I have a great episode for you this time. My guest today still considers herself a little bit of a new nurse, but in her time as a nurse, she's had some really fantastic experiences. I'm excited to say that she's serving the National ENA Board as the Emerging Professionals Liaison, and you are going to love this episode with my friend, Amie.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Amie Porcelli. I am a ED nurse. I still consider myself a baby nurse. I graduated nursing school in 2016, and I've only been an ENA member since 2017. So It's a little crazy. Yeah, I know. I really love my job. It's really awesome. I really enjoy where I work. I work in a level 1 trauma center in urban Philadelphia, and it's, no matter what people tell you, it's my dream job, and it's awesome.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Isn't it cool to be able to say that?
Yeah.
It's so cool to be able to say that.
Yeah, it is. It's really great. I mean, every job has its ups and downs, its pros and cons. You know, there's still days where I'm like, "Oh man, That stinks here." But dude, it's great. I love it.
Overall, you're like, okay, I'll go to work today. That's fine.
Every day.
Yeah. So
I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's great. I feel like, because I always wanted to be, like, I want to be in the trauma bay. Like, I love it in there. I love the adrenaline rush, the heart pounding, when things are coming in. And it's when it leads up to it, right? It's like the stress. But once a patient gets there, it's just like cool, calm, collected, well-oiled machine. And to see that come together, man, it's art. It really is. It's like watching a musical. The dance, everybody knows the dance, their cue, the choreography. It's awesome.
It's kind of funny, so my logo on the podcast is a little dancer on the little EKG thing. And I came up with the title Art of Emergency Nursing because I really wanted that title. I was like, that's going to be the title of the podcast. That was decided. Like, that was decided before I even decided what I was going to be podcasting about. And then I asked a friend of mine who's an artist, and she's just brilliant, and she's like one of the most creative people I know. And I asked her, I said, I just got a question for you. And I said, what would the art of emergency nursing look like? And she's like, oh, it's a dance. And I'm like, And I'm like, huh. I that never seen that, like never thought that, never. And then I was like, and she said exactly the same thing. She goes, it's like having a good dance partner. She said a good trauma goes like a well choreographed dance. And she's like, that's what it is. And I was like, well, there you go. There's the name of my podcast.
Yeah. And it's awesome. Right. And like that feeling you get, it's like being on stage, like you know, when you nailed it, and there's nothing better in the world than, you know, when that resuscitation comes in, they're intubated, the whole team's working together, and like you just put your arm out, and all of a sudden like epi shows up in it, and you just like slam it in, and then you turn around and someone's got the Amie, and you're like, oh my God, all right, like it, you know, and it's just, and when you walk out of that room and you know, like when it went well, like you're just like that feeling. There's nothing like it is. It's a performance.
Yeah.
Every time.
Now the
like
hard
Broadway. We're on Broadway.
Now the hard part about that is like it really is a performance, but like you're on stage for 12 hours a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on stage. You're the center of attention, and you're what everyone's looking at for 12 hours. And that can sometimes get exhausting.
It's always exhausting. And I think that ties into what we were talking about when we first, you know, picked up the phone, where it wasn't necessarily part of maybe our whole conversation, but now it definitely is. It's coming back to it, where that whole self-care piece is so important, because we build, as ED nurses, in order to function in that environment, you have to build up a wall, right? Because you're performing, you're on stage. Your stage presence is not necessarily your true self. And maybe you do that on purpose to protect your true self because you need to. Or maybe your true self is too trusting, too vulnerable to excel in our environment. But I don't necessarily agree with that. You know, I think if you're a vulnerable or trusting person, I think that makes you a better nurse in so many ways. And I think the fact when we build up those walls, it can do us a disservice.
Yeah.
And what we're dealing with right now is because you built that wall so much that you can't deal with your true self anymore. Like, where are you? Do you even know where are you at? Can you even find yourself anymore?
Yeah.
And that bubbles up in the anxiety that we feel, in the panic that we feel when we can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good. And I've been trying really hard to focus on that aspect in this whole like Corona crisis. Like I send out like emails about free resources for anxiety. Like in the middle of the huddle, I'll just say, if you guys were scared last night, it's okay. I was scared too. But does anyone want to talk? I'm here.
Yeah.
And at first people were like, what the heck is she doing? And then
they're like, oh,
one
stop. And then they're like, yeah, but really, let's talk.
And then really, yeah. And then like got lots of messages like, thank you for saying that. Like, I'm struggling. Like, so many people that you would never think would struggle are the ones that are really struggling.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's part of that performance piece.
Yep.
We're artists, right? It's part of that, the actor, the actress piece.
Yeah. I mean, even me, like I'm not even on the front lines, and like I feel the anxiety of just kind of everything. And I don't have a hard time sleeping. But like for the last few nights until last night, I've had a hard time sleeping. Like I was like, you know, like kind of struggling a little bit with sleep. And I was like going, this is unusual. Like sleep is my friend. Like I'm really good at that. But you know, the last couple of days, it's kind of escaped me a little bit. And I realized I'm like going, I'm dreaming about work all night long. All night long, I'm dreaming about work. And, you know, not to the degree that, you know, probably a lot of people are, you know, because let's face it, my job right now is not stressful. Like we have our stress, but
I'm sure it's stressful.
It's not life and death stress. And it's one of those things where one of the things after you're an ER nurse, if you go do anything else, one of the things you're going to find is like, there's a lot of shit that just doesn't matter. Like a lot of shit's just not a big deal. And you know, and when, you know, someone comes to you and goes, oh my God, we got to get this done. This is a crisis. And I'm like going, is anybody dying? Anybody bleeding to death? No? Okay, well, I'm good. We'll be all right. We'll figure this shit out. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And your bar is just so screwed up. Like I remember, like when I was working in the transfer center, these doctors get all wound up. These administrators get all wound up, and they're like, "Oh my God, we got this problem." And I'm like, "This isn't a big deal. Like, just call them back and tell them, hey, let's fix this." I'm like, because it doesn't matter. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. This is like a phone call away from getting fixed.
Yeah. And
in the ER, it's not always like that.
Oh my God, I totally agree. I think that's so funny. We've had the same experience where this is before I was a nurse. I was working, I worked for Whole Foods. Actually, I was a manager with them and also like a buyer and supervisor for the finance stuff, like doing all this finance stuff. And I remember I was an EMT at the time, like a volunteer. Jolly. I was Jolly Volley. I loved it though. I was super jolly. I'm still jolly, I think. But I guess we have to come up with a rhyming name for Jolly Nurse. We'll figure it out. We'll put that out in the universe somewhere. Someone will come back. Yeah, and I just, oh my God, I remember so much stress. And corporate would call and they would be like, your margin is only 2.4%. We're projecting a 2.5. And I was like, okay, but my profit is up 2.4% from last month. Right. Are you going to, they're like, well, and they would come into the store and come and tear my department apart and pick this and that and the other thing and yell in my face. And the day that I knew I was done, and I was like, because I always wanted to be in medicine and something, but it didn't work out or whatever. The day where I was like, oh my, I'm out of here, was they were screaming to me about the mac and cheese at the hot food bar did not have a garnish on it. I mean screaming. And they were like, you need to bring this back into your team, and they make it again. And I was like, you guys know this is a grocery store, right? This is a grocery store. It's not that serious. Dudes, I said that to the Northeast manager of Whole Foods. That man makes $5 million a year. And he's in charge of $1 billion. Wow. And I said to his face.
And he was like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
Yeah. And he just blinked at me. And I was like, sure. We'll put some parsley on it. And he was like, that's great. And the next day I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
You're like I'm done.
I'm done. Because I was out with the riding the ambulance and seeing real stuff. And I was like, why are you screaming about parsley on mac and cheese? Are you serious right now?
You're like, this doesn't even matter.
Right?
You're like, this doesn't even matter.
Yeah. But I get, but for him, it super mattered. Right. Yeah, and that's when I knew. I was like, this is not where I need to be. My future is not in corporate. I'm out. I gotta go.
Well, you know what I found? So I worked for a boss who was, she was in care management. That was her whole career, was care management. And she was the kind of person that she would blow up. She'd be like, "Bah!" And then be like, but it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. And that was her style. That's what she did. And what I realized is I don't do that. I don't blow up. She'll be like, hey, this person did something that's just terrible. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going to talk to her about that, because you're right. That was terrible. That was not great. But I didn't blow my top. I didn't freak out. I wasn't like, oh, okay, well, geez, we're going to have to cut off her head today. But that's what she wanted. And she'd tell me these things and I'd be like, oh, all right, I can address that. That's not a big deal. And I was always super calm, and that's how I am. That's just who I am. Things don't rattle me. I'm like, sure. Okay, let's fix it. It's no big deal. Can we change it? Okay, then no worries. Can't change it? Okay, no worries. And, and what I realized, even for my wife, sometimes that drives her crazy. She gets wrapped up about stuff sometimes. And I'm just like, no, it'll be all right. We'll fix it. And what I realized with my boss is she wanted to see me have a reaction. And she wanted my reaction to match closer to what her reaction was. So what I started doing is when she would be like, rah, 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 I'd beat her to the punch. I'd be like, oh my God, this is crap. I can't believe this happened. Oh my God. And like, I'd be like worked up and be like, oh, she's done. Like, she's done. I'm out. She's done. I'm going to see her right now. And she'd be like, well, now calm down, Kevin. Let's not get too excited here. And I'd be like, okay, all right. If you say it's okay, if you think this is going to be all right, then I'll calm down a little bit. But I'm pretty ticked off. Like, that's what she needed to see from me. So you know what? That's what she got to see. But the hard part was, I was like, I'm not being me.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, like, that job was just sucking my soul. And I was just like, I can't do this. I'm done. So, because, like, you know, amongst all, with my job, I'm going to spend 40 hours, 50 hours a week there. I got to be me. Like, love me, hate me, that's fine, whatever. I got to be me. So,
yeah.
Yeah. And
I know.
And if you're not, like, it sucks.
I know. And it's so sad. There's so many people in this country. I can't remember the statistic. It's something crazy. Like 60% of people, like, you know, don't look forward to going to work every day. They hate their job.
Well, I mean, even,
oh my God.
Like, can you imagine? Like, so, but even amongst emergency nurses, like, I don't know how much you're in these emergency nursing chat groups and stuff on Facebook, but there's a million of them. And sometimes it's just toxic. Sometimes it's just like going, oh, if you hate your job that much, like, vote with your feet, dude. Like, go get another job. Like, you're a nurse. You have lots of options. You can go somewhere tomorrow and get another job. I remember I worked with this guy, Max, and Max just hated his job. He just hated it. But you know what? He wouldn't go anywhere. Because he's like, well, I can't go anywhere else. I don't know anything else. And I'm like, dude, you're a nurse. Figure that shit out. Like, figure that shit out and figure out what else you can do. Because it's going to be a lot easier to come to work if you like your job. And if you don't like your job, like, find something you like. Because
I mean, we all do it. We all get to that point where when you're burnt out.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. And you know, and some people seem to be able to get past that, but some don't.
Yeah.
What else did you do before nursing besides work at was it Whole Foods, you said?
Yeah.
What else did you do besides
that? I was burnt out at that job.
I bet.
I literally burnt. I was the Jolly Volley, and then I got a paid volunteer job. That was awesome.
Paid volunteer. That's EMT. Kind of a... Okay.
Yeah, I worked BLS for a hospital, like my hometown hospital up in Jersey. That was awesome.
I bet.
That was great.
I bet.
Yeah. And then before that, I've had so many jobs, dude. I've had so many jobs. And I think that people my age group, like, I'm 33, people my age group, like 2 years above me and then like 5 years below me, we, like, as a whole, like, we just have like 1,000 jobs.
I think that's a lot of people, though. I think that's a lot of people. So here's a question. Here's a tough question for you. If you lost your nursing license tomorrow, it's a terrible thought. If you lost your nursing license tomorrow, what would you do?
Would I have to get another license? I don't know. I would go.
No. You can do whatever you want.
Well, before I went to nursing school, I was thinking about going to law school, and I was studying for the LSAT. And then I realized I don't like reading that much. I don't like reading all the time. I don't like reading footnotes that much, because if you want to win a case and you want to pass a law and you want to get the gotcha moment, the gotcha moments are in the footnotes, and I don't have time for that. I'm too ADD for that.
Yeah,
that's the title of the podcast. Amie Porcelli, anti-footnote.
Anti-footnote.
Like, I don't have time.
Footnotes are not your friend.
No, not my friend.
So I have a friend, one of the smartest nurses I've ever met. His name's Drew, and he is just brilliant. He's just a brilliant guy. He, like, just goes to school. It's just what he does. It's his hobby. His hobby is learning. He was a paramedic, then went to nursing school, then went for his BSN, then went for his MSN, and I think he did nurse practitioner. I don't remember. Got bored, decided he didn't really want to do that, and then decided he was going to go to law school. So he went to law school part-time, finished that, got a degree in law, and now works as a director of an emergency department.
That's awesome.
And then one day a week goes and practices law.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, and then one of the last times I seen him, it's been a while since I've seen him. He was in there, and I was like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he's like, "Oh, he goes, I'm just hanging out." And he's like, "I'm going to school." And I'm like, "What? Like, dude, you're a lawyer, an NP, and master's. Like, what are you going to school for?" And he's like, "Oh," he goes, "Oh, I'm taking a like cooking class or something." I'm like, seriously?
I love that.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And he was like, "Oh, no, it's fun. It's a lot of fun." And like, I was like shaming him. I'm like, "How many degrees do you need, dude?" But that's what he does. It's his hobby. And one of the things he always says, he always tells people, he goes, "Law school's not that hard." Like,
oh my God, he must be a genius.
He is brilliant. He's like really one of the smartest people I've ever met. Like, it makes me sick. So
maybe he only reads the footnotes and he just gets all the information.
Maybe. I don't know if he's got a photographic memory or what, but he's smart. He's a smart dude. Anyway.
I wish that permanent student was a job, because that's what I would. I love school.
That wouldn't be a bad job. Job. So, I mean, you can make that your job. You just have to go like get your doctorate or, PhD or DMP or whatever.
Yeah.
You could do that for a long time. Maybe not full time forever, but for a long time.
Yeah.
So what made you decide why nursing?
Well, it was a long road, right? I wanted to be a veterinarian first. Okay. My whole life, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then one of my first jobs was at the local veterinary hospital. And I realized that like, I hate cats.
What? Who hates cats?
I hate cats. When they're so mean. They're so mean. Like, well, I guess I don't hate cats.
Well, it's because you're doing bad things to them.
Bites. I hate cat bites and being attacked. I don't like
different
it.
story. It's a different story. Completely different story.
I don't like it. And I remember being like talking to the head veterinarian and be like, "Can you just like be a vet for dogs?" And he goes, I'll never forget his face. His mouth was on the floor.
He's like, "What?"
No. I was like, "Okay, well, I guess I have to find a new career."
So, okay, then this shit's not going to work out.
It was not going to work out.
That's funny.
It's not going to work out.
That's funny.
So,
so that's going to be the name of this episode. Amie, I hate cats.
I hate cats. And you also, because with cats, I'm going to make a lot of enemies with this, but with cats, like, you don't know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates, except they're all sour, except for there's only one good one.
It's all maple nougat.
Yeah, like by the time you find the coconut, it's too late. Like, your taste buds are ruined. It's no point anymore. Like, just go for the gummy worms, where you always know what you're going to get.
That's funny. Now, I'm a dog person, but I like cats too. But my wife's allergic, so we don't have a cat.
That's where I'm going. But maybe there's another role. I don't know. But we'll see. But it's a different kind of call, though.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, and I wanted to be a PA so bad, and I didn't get in. I didn't get into PA school, and it broke me, dude.
Did it?
Broke me. And it was when my girlfriend, who was now wife at the time, we had only been dating for a little bit. And I was like, stick with me, babe. It's going to be great. I'm going to be a PA. We're going to do all this stuff. And like, it came crashing down, and I did not deal with it well.
Huh.
I don't deal with massive failure well. I don't think most people do.
No,
but I really
everybody.
don't. Yeah. But I was not okay.
Huh.
When you have all your eggs in a basket, and then the basket has a hole in it.
Yeah.
And you're like, look, and you're like, oh, Jesus.
That had to be devastating.
It was devastating, especially because, I graduated college in 2008. I lived in New York at the time, and I had a first-hand witness to all of the carnage that happened with that,
Yeah.
And I think that really scarred me as a person, that whole scenario. I mean, yeah, I'm still dealing with it. Like, I've changed, fundamentally changed on how I view the future, life, money, everything is because of living through so closely in 2008.
Huh.
Yeah. I'll probably never pay my student loans off ever. And I have to accept that. It is what it is. Yeah, but it took a really long time for me to get there.
Yeah.
So I had all of these plans that I was going to go to PA school. It was going to be great. It was going to be awesome. But I would have to take out more loans but it would be fine because I would make more money and everything would be great. And my wife was like, my girlfriend at the time, she's like, what do you want to do that for? Like, you're always going to be someone's assistant. It literally says assistant in the title. And I was like, no, you don't know. Like, you can do a lot of stuff.
You
I was shadowing. Like, you understand. I was shadowing a PA at the time who was like so influential on my life. Like, and I don't know if she really knows like how much like she really had a hand in my future and like kind of the person I became. And I was like, you do stuff, because she was a PA in the emergency department in Jersey. They were very active at that hospital. They kind of let them work really to the full extent of the scope of their practice, full extent of the license. It was really awesome to see. I've been in other departments where they kind of don't let PAs run around like that, and it was really awesome. So I caught the bug. I caught the emergency nursing bug as a PA, but I didn't know it at the time because she was doing all the stuff that I do now, but except suturing.
Yeah.
But, so my wife was like, you should be a nurse, because if you're a nurse, you can do whatever you want. And I was like, that's not true. So of course I don't listen to her.
You're like, let's disregard that advice.
And my best friend, who's a doctor, goes, you should be a nurse. And I hung up the phone after a 7-hour conversation of crying with her. They didn't get into PA school. And I said, hey, babe, I think I'm going to go to nursing school. And regardless, needless to say, we probably didn't talk for like 12 hours because she was so mad.
She's like, seriously?
But I want to officially go on record to give her credit that she was the first one to tell me to go.
That's funny.
And she was right. And it wasn't until I was like, this is not just a job, right? Like a PA was a job because I was in a hole. I was like scarred. I was in a hole and it was a way out of the hole. But nursing is a life. When I looked back, I said, thank God I never got in. Like, thank you, God. Like, literally on my knees praying, God, thank you for that heartbreak at the time. Because that would have been just a job and I probably would have been miserable. But nursing is a life. And now I have a life, a career, future. And we all have ADD.
Totally.
In emergency nursing. We do, right?
Everyone.
And I have the ability, I can go, each one of us, we can all go do whatever we want.
Right.
And that is so liberating. That is the American dream, dude. Like, that is what it's all about. It's amazing.
You're right. Like I told, we have a group of residents that we're working with now, and I tell them, I'm like, dude, your RN is like the golden ticket. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can make as much money as you want or as little money as you want. It's completely, everything's in your control. Like, the ball is in your court. You get tired of this job, you can go down the road and you can get another job. There's places in Houston where you can switch jobs and not even switch your parking spot. There's just so many options. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's so amazing. And I think that, and people were telling me that, and I think you have to be in a certain place to hear that.
Yeah.
Because when you're a person that needs to hear that, you're in a place where you're not capable of hearing that. You're in a place where, it's dark and gloomy. You don't know where you're going to go from here. You don't know what's going to become of you in your life. You don't know how you're going to pay the bills. And when someone comes and tells you, here, flashing a golden ticket in your face, you're like, get the hell out of here with your snake oil. My grandparents told me about people like you. I'm supposed to smack you upside the head.
That's funny.
Like, it takes, because I'm thinking of that when I hear myself saying these things, and it's so ironic, because if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, would I be saying these things out loud that people were telling to me? I'd say not on your life.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a bunch of crap. But it's not. It's so true.
It's true.
Really can. It's freedom.
Yeah, you're right.
It's freedom, and I think that is a large part of like who I am. Like, my grandpa is a World War II vet. Like, he's still around. I get to talk to him about everything that's
awesome.
going on. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think the biggest part of everything is like the freedom to be what you want to be.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to know that you can go to any state in the country and you're going to find a job. And not only are you going to find a job, like you're going to find your people. Like you could start in my ER, one of my ERs tomorrow, and you would find people just like you. How cool is that? Like,
it's amazing.
You could totally like find your tribe, find your people. It's amazing. It just blows me away. Like I moved from New Mexico, kind of, small town in New Mexico, and, big town relatively, but not compared to Houston. I moved from a small town in Albuquerque to Houston. And you know what? Through ENA, I got involved with the ENA here, and it was like I found my people, like people I love, people who mean a ton to me. And it just happens just like that. Like I had friends before I got here.
Yeah.
And how cool is that?
It's awesome.
So it certainly is something that's hard to beat.
Yeah. I think a lot about that, like freedom aspect. And I don't mean in the terms of like waving like a bumper sticker that says like freedom, like not like that, but more of that personal, like what that equates as is like, we truly can, you really are in this country right now. Like you are mostly, hopefully, you're free to do what you want.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. It's amazing. And I think I probably think about it more so than most people because I do live in Philadelphia and I live walking distance to Independence Hall, like where our country was formed, where they wrote the Declaration of Independence, where like they there's a park. I run through it or right next to it. Like, it's incredible. I see the Liberty Bell every day.
That's cool.
And it's amazing. And, there's another park that they planted a tree over all the dead bodies from the Revolutionary War. Like that is huge. And I think about that stuff a lot. And I think, what does that mean for me and what's my duty to that? And I think what it means is live my life because I can, because somebody fought so I could. So why should we be holding back? If there's something that you want to be, there's something that you want to do, you better go do it.
Yeah. Because
just the fact that you're living, breathing right now on this earth, like, is giving you the ability to go do that. Like, what's stopping you? What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
There's nothing. Like, go do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. That's got to be true. And I mean, I guess I never really thought about it, but you're right. I mean, you're in a place where that history was made, and it was made for you.
Mm-hmm.
For you.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's when I get like so mad when people say or do stuff. I'm like, no, like, this is so important. Our country is so wonderful. I love it. I believe in Americans. I believe that because we all have that weird little fight in us, right? Like, we really do.
It's true.
And that's what I think is really important, that if we can find a way to have everybody embrace that little fight in them and that spark, and have everybody embrace that willingness to live their true self and their true freedom, then that is really how we're going to get, I can't even like put it into words, like, that's really going to be how we move forward with everything. And we really would, I mean, that would be like heaven on earth, because then everyone would be happy.
Right.
That's
pretty cool.
It upsets me when I see people struggling.
Yeah.
And I know that they can do and be better.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned history. I know you're a little bit of a history nerd.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it.
What lesson from history do you think nurses need to remember in a day like today?
Oh, wow. That's an awesome question. I think the most important thing is that history always repeats itself. So you better learn and take it with you. Take what people are telling you and take it to heart, because you're going to use that advice somewhere, right? Like, everything we're going with, we've done it before.
Yeah.
There's been a pandemic every 100 years. So I think the thing that probably is most striking for me is everyone keeps talking about, the 1918 Spanish flu. It was terrible. Oh my God. But it was. But we didn't really learn from it because we're responding the exact same way that we're responding now. We're wearing some masks. No one's seeing each other. We're not really, it's all the same. We didn't progress in 100 years. Why? Why are we squabbling? Big lessons since we're talking about like Revolutionary War, is like George Washington, the yellow fever, 1794? Let me ask Emily. She has like a degree.
She's going to phone a friend.
1794, right?
Yeah, 1790. I think it was 1794.
You know, it was just going through her head right there was, are you on a podcast or are you playing Jeopardy? That was what was just going through her head. She's like, what is happening here? Like, what are you doing?
She's used to it. Yeah. But, so they had the yellow fever epidemic. In fact, the one park that I was talking to you, it's called Washington Square Park. No one would ever know it. You can Google it. Look where it is in Philly. It's like in this middle of the city, Washington Square Park. Nobody would know unless you see a tiny little plaque that's right by the front entrance that literally says this park is like built on bodies. Wow. You're like, oh. And it's a mix of the Revolutionary War and yellow fever because there was an epidemic. Everyone was dying in the whole city. They didn't know what to do.
Huh.
And George Washington was the president. So what did he do? He was like, you shouldn't leave your house. You should get out of the city. And he moved the entire government to something called the Germantown White House. It's in Germantown, Pennsylvania. It's a few miles away. And he conducted the government social distancing.
No kidding.
So if we did that in 1794, where we had just invented the smallpox vaccine, which George Washington proliferated, by the way, you couldn't join the Revolutionary War in George Washington's army unless you were inoculated with smallpox. But yet, here we are in 2020, and we're fighting about vaccines. Lord, help me. Right? So, like, America from the start, we were the best in the world. Why are we fighting now? We've been here before. We know what to do. We just got to get out of our own way. Like, you know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why? Like, why was George Washington with, like, no teeth, like, this morning, 1794, and we're arguing about it now?
That's pretty funny. Like, I had no idea.
Right.
That's crazy.
Look it up, Germantown White House. It's cool. I think you can even do a virtual tour in it. And in the front, there's like a foyer in the front that has checkered flooring, like white and black checker flooring. And the Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson were at war with each other. And it was in that room that George Washington called them over. He said, you're coming to the Germantown White House and you're sitting down and you're not leaving until we figure this crap out. And they did. And he kept them there for a weekend, and it was over that weekend that our country was saved because it was crumbling. It was their financial crisis at the time. So we had a financial crisis. We were in a debt load that is way worse than what we have now. We had just fought a war, and now we had an epidemic. We've been through this before, but it was way worse.
And look at the tools we have now.
Right.
Look at the tools we have now. Like, you know, I got to think and I got to hope that we're going to have a vaccine for this thing before you know it. And
that's how I know it's going to be fine and it's going to be better. It's because we've already done this before. Like, literally, our country was 1 year old, and now we're the best country in the world. So it's gonna be okay. Happened before every single time.
That's awesome.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
That's awesome. I like that. You're just bound to be like a nursing professor someday. I just know this is going to happen. Like, I'm just going to call my shot now so that, 10 years from now, and you're like, yeah, you're right, Kevin. And you're like, I'm going to listen to this podcast again and be like, huh, yeah, he nailed it.
Oh my God. I probably will never listen to it. I won't. It's embarrassing.
Oh, no, it's going to be fun.
I won't. I haven't listened to my speech. I won't listen to it. I'll never listen to it.
Really?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I can't.
So for the people,
my wife just yelled from the wall. It's so good.
So is that on video anywhere?
They definitely have it. I think because it's part of the conference
on demand or whatever.
Yeah, that. Yeah, there's a piece of it on Facebook somewhere. Almost all of it. I think the first little bit is cut off, but I know that there's the video of it floating around on Facebook. But I can't watch. I don't know. It's embarrassing. I can't.
For those who weren't there, and I know a lot of people in the podcast audience are like, I have no idea what they're talking about. She did a speech at the opening session. Was it in Austin, right?
Austin, yeah.
Yeah, in Austin. And she crushed it. She did such a great job. It was amazing. She was such a rock star. And like, oh my God, like the place just went crazy. Like there are 3 of you guys, and all 3 of you guys did really, really well, but you crushed it.
Well, thank you.
So
I appreciate that a lot.
You were amazing. I was like, and that's when I was like, okay, we got to get this girl on the podcast, because I was just kind of getting the podcast started then. So
yeah, that's when we first met. You like came up to me and you were like, I want to interview you.
Yep.
Like, who is this guy? And then all of a sudden, you were everywhere. You're everywhere.
The podcast certainly has taken off a little bit, which is kind of cool. So I didn't realize quite how much until I was at SCLO this last time. And this woman comes up and goes, "Oh my God, you're Kevin McFarland." And I'm like, "Yep." And she's like, "Oh my God, I feel like we're best friends, but you have no idea who I am." I was like, "That's a little stalkery, but okay." And she was fantastic. And, you know, you gave her a big hug. She gave me a big hug. And we're friends on Facebook now, and it's super cool. But she was like, "I listen to you every single week." And I'm like,
That's awesome.
That's cool. I was like, that's really cool. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to do. And I get to talk to people like you, which is amazing.
And learn silly facts.
And learn history that applied to nursing.
Yeah.
So speaking of history, tell me about a patient, your history that you'll never, ever forget.
Oh, man. This question is really hard because it goes back to that wall piece. My personal wall that I've built up is that I like brain dump everything. As soon as I leave, I have to like forget it because it's too traumatizing.
That could be a good or a bad thing.
To remember.
Yeah. But there's got to be, I know there's some that have gotten through. I know there is.
Oh, yeah.
Like so, probably more than you care to remember, but
yeah, yeah. There was this one. It's not good. It's not a good story.
Okay.
But it's a scary story, and I think that's what's important is that, oh my God, like how the fragility really of like life, like how it's insane. This kid came in. I say kid because the patient was only like a couple years younger than me at the time, like 1 year younger than me. So
wow. Not
like 18. So old enough to know better.
Yeah.
You know, and he came in via BLS, which is the most ridiculous thing. But when you think about it, you're like, okay, I guess we could see that. He called 911 because he was like addicted to huffing like canisters of keyboard cleaner.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, which is a thing.
It's a thing.
It's a huge. It's a huge thing.
Is it a huge thing? I don't know. I don't know how huge it is. Like, but you know, that's like the perfect high for you if you're like 13, right?
Yeah.
Because you have it. It's there. It's easy to get to. Bad thing is it'll kill your ass dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. I didn't know of this whole like underground stuff until I had this patient encounter, which I think probably changed a lot of how I think about almost, now that I'm starting to talk about this one patient changed a lot about kind of everything and how I think about stuff. So this guy came in, and I was probably only like a year off orientation at this time. And my orientation where I started was 6 months. So I'm a year and 6 months into being a nurse. And this guy comes in, he called 911 because he was addicted to keyboard cleaner. He huffed like 2 cans of it, and he was called because he was having trouble breathing, respiratory distress. But he called full speech, like, I can't breathe. So they sent BLS because, right, we do that thing. Oh, he's talking full sentences, telling me he can't breathe.
He's fine. Yeah.
He's fine. That's ESI 4.
Yep. To the waiting room, sir. To the waiting room.
Yeah, because he's young and he's looking fine. You know, so they bring him in and they pick him up, and he comes in the room, and the room that he brought him in happened to be one of our bigger, like, secondary resuscitation rooms. only just because of the nature of we didn't have any other rooms, and they didn't want to just put him in the triage waiting room. They're like, all right, well, let's just get him in here to be seen. Thank God, because he came in on the stretcher, sitting up on a non-rebreather, like full awake, and he was just like, hey, like, what's going on today? You know, and there's like three of us. We're starting our choreography of the dance when an ambulance patient comes in, right? So I'm the one talking. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, I can't breathe. I'm like, okay, well, you're breathing now. I'll never forget that I said that to him. I said, you're breathing now, so you're okay. What? Yeah, are you allergic to anything? When we start going down that road, and literally the 30 seconds, it felt like 5 minutes, but it was 30 seconds. He starts turning red, and he goes, no, man, I really can't breathe. And I'm like, you're breathing. It's okay. Like, talk to me. You're all right. We're going to get you undressed and get you on the monitor. And then he starts tripoding. And I'm like, that's not good. And he looks at, right? I'm like, oh no, this guy really can't breathe. And he goes, like, he leans 3 inches to my face, and he goes, no, man, I really can't effing breathe. And I was like, okay, we're going to take care of you. And I mean, the spiral, all of a sudden, he's huffing and puffing, he's breathing. I will never forget it. Came in the door, his respiratory rate was 25. It shot up to 44 breaths per minute. He was tachycardic 150. He really was not breathing. His SAT was 82.
Wow.
I was like, what are we going to do here? We're like, well, let's intubate him. We're going to intubate him. And the ambulance is just standing there. And they're like, we've never seen this before. Because they're BLS guys. Because they picked him up because he was talking. Yeah, like crazy shit. And the amount of time from conversation was the time it took us to move him from the stretcher to the room stretcher, the ambulance stretcher to our stretcher. And then he was tripoding. And we're like, oh my God, we got to intubate this guy. The ambulance, and all of a sudden now there's all the docs. It's the chaos of the dance, right? Everyone's running around. And we said, why can't you, what's going on? Were you allergic to anything? You do any drugs? And he goes, yeah, the cleaner. I'm like, what? And then, he kind of passes out and we have to intubate him. And the EMS guy goes, oh yeah, he had a bag of these next to him and he ripped the can out and the can's crushed. So we learned that in order to get a better high, you crush the can in the middle and you get the full can in one breath.
Lord.
Instead of just huffing the can with the spray, like the top, instead of pushing it down over a couple hours. If you smash the can, you get a buddy to smash the can with their foot. You lay on the ground. Oh, I learned all this because I talked to all these addicts that are afterwards to figure out how did this happen. Yeah. Talk to a whole bunch of people. This is a huge thing. They all get together, they smash it with their foot, and they inhale the whole can at once.
Holy cow.
He did 4 of those.
Wow.
And I looked at the can because it was smashed. You couldn't really read what it was. So I'm trying to find what is this? What is this chemical? What? Because now they're on the phone with toxicology. They're on the phone with the poison control center, trying to figure out what's happening. And I'm looking at the can and I see this word. It says difluoroethane or something kind of close like that. I was like, difluoro? I was like, why do I know that? That sounds so familiar. I was like, what is that? And then it hit me. It said 1-2 difluoroethane. And I was studying for my CEN at the time, which they told me I wasn't eligible to take because I wasn't a nurse for 2 years. And I said, screw you, I'm taking it. I was studying for my CEN at the time. And they had in the book a 1-pager about chemicals that you have to know because you're screwed if you come in contact with them. And I remember reading fluoroethane. And I remember, I'll never forget, I looked at the doctor and I said, Doc, this is a fluorocarbon. This is he's in trouble. This is not reversible. We got to get oh my God, you got to let them know this is what it is. And she looked at me and she was like, it's a what? And I said, this is a fluorocarbon. And she was like, oh my God, we got to get this kid on ECMO.
Holy shit.
And she was like, thank you. Thank God that you found, thank God. And now the other memory I have is her screaming on the phone with CT surgery, you got to come down here. And him being like, no, because there's nothing we can do. Yeah. And this kid went from literally ESI 4 to we're done in like 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. It was so crazy. And I just remember being so angry. Like, one, angry at this kid for doing this, right? Like, $2 cleaner. Like, why? And that's when I was like, well, let me try to understand why. So I did all this research. It's like, why? Why is this kid huffing stuff like this? It has the same, this chemical, the 1,2-difluoroethane, has the same response in your brain, the same high when you huff this stuff as heroin. So this kid was doing heroin for $2 for 5 bottles.
Wow.
Get at Staples.
Holy cow.
And then I got mad about, why is this legal? Why?
You're like, why is that chemical in there?
Right. Why is that chemical in there? And now, what if it has to be in there for it to work, right? Whatever. But then why can you get all of it? Why can you just buy a case of it for $5 and, and go kill yourself somewhere with it? Yeah. And it's not regulated. Then I got mad. I said, why isn't this regulated? And then I really got mad at the CT surgeon. I was like, why do you not even try? This kid was talking to me 3 hours.
Yeah, just minutes ago.
And not even that. If you would, we were on the phone with you 2 hours ago. So why not? Why? So I think this was a really pivotal case for me in terms of learning that there's so much more to learn, right? Like I didn't know all this stuff. Like each patient, I think now I try to see, well, what happened to you? What happened to you that this is where you are now today? Why?
That's always the question. Like, nobody chooses to be there. Like, nobody chooses to be in the shape that they are when they get into the emergency department. Like,
Thank you.
They've done a long road, and sometimes it's a long, shitty road.
Yeah. Everyone, and when that person comes in there, like, that's a person. And I think we forget that a lot. Yeah. That is still a person. And just like you said, exactly, you took the words right out of my mouth. What led you down this road where you're here now? And if I can try to understand that maybe just a little, and then understand if you keep going down that road, where is that going to take you? Maybe today I can intercept that in some way.
Yeah.
Maybe today we can kind of change your path a little bit. Yeah. Because I didn't know that you can just go get this stuff. That's a problem.
Yeah. So
I would like to work to alleviate that problem. That's one of my big life goals, is to get some kind of something. This shouldn't be widely available in the form it is, or there has to be some kind of change. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but there has to be something. Then again, also, why are some people candidates for some things and then they're not? The whole also health equity piece too. Why do some people get some resources and some don't? But there's just a lot of why. And I think that in terms of a hindrance, personally for me has been a driver of finding out why. And the reason to find out the why is not for knowledge, but the reason is to then take that knowledge and then make things better for people out there, make things better.
Yeah. I think that's everybody's goal. Like, I think so many people just want to leave a little bit of a mark on something, right?
Yeah.
Make things a little bit better.
I mean, you could say it's naive or idealistic, but I would say that that's wrong. I think that you almost have to be a little idealistic, or you're going to get your heart and your brain completely trampled, where there's no hope left. There's no hope left. How can you come out of that experience, right, and then not walk out and say, just like with this corona stuff, like, there's got to be something that's going to come of this, like, because then the why turns into, once you find out the whys of how did this happen, then the why turns into the real big why, like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? There has to be something that comes out of that.
Yeah.
Because before this guy, it was more like, oh yeah, that's my mentality was like, well, that just happened. That's it. Next. It was very cavalier. And I didn't really like that that's the road that I was taking, and it wasn't good. It wasn't who I was.
Yeah.
And I found that was the coping mechanism that I was starting to come up with, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I didn't like it. So I don't know. Yeah.
There's so many times that we don't, in the emergency department, we don't always see the long term. We don't always see the end. We don't always see the end product. Like one of the things we're like the masters of short relationships, right? like we see them for a little while, we treat them, we get them out or get them upstairs.
Would you say we're ghosting?
Right. Yeah. Kinda. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's good, but sometimes you're like, I don't know if I'm you, but sometimes I'm like, what did this, whatever happened there? Like, what was the story? So, I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Man, some heavy stuff.
It was crazy.
Tell me a funny patient story that you'll never forget.
A funny patient story? Oh my God. There's this one guy, he came in, he's confused, as they always are. Right? He's confused. He's this big guy, huge. He must have been like, oh my God. It was like 6'4", this huge guy, bald, like 6'4". He must have been like 3'10", this huge guy. Was confused, didn't know what the hell was going on. So we're like, maybe he's having a stroke. No stroke. All the workup's fine. We don't know what's happening. We're like, well, we couldn't find a hold of his family. We didn't know what was going on. So we're like, well, I guess we'll admit him. We'll see what happens. So he was right in front of the nurse's station. And of course, right, we're understaffed. We don't have support. He needs a sitter. I asked for a sitter, and they're like, is he suicidal? I'm like, well, no. And they're like, well, are you sure? Because we're understaffed. And I'm like, no, he's not. But I really should have a sitter. And they're like, well, we'll get you one as soon as we can, quote unquote, which means like, you better turn your chair around and watch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like,
yeah.
Keep an eye on that dude. Okay. Because no one else
is. Right, yeah. Yeah. So, of course, like, I'm in the high acuity zone that we have. So, and that's the zone which includes, like, the trauma bay and the resus rooms. And then my assignment on the side is, like, a softer, quote-unquote, resus room. And that's why he was in there, because he was, like, the stroke alert, because he was, like, acutely confused. So, a STEMI patient comes into room 1. I'll never forget. Comes into room 1, and we run in there and we all help, because that's what we do. We help everybody. But lo and behold, Mr. Muscles McGee over there that doesn't know his ass from his elbow is left completely on his own accord. And I know, and I just hear like a screaming, and I run over and I look, and he is completely buck naked. And he has somehow acquired our airway intubation box off the code cart that was in front of his room. And it was wide open. All the contents were on the ground. It was wide open, and it was on a chair. And he was squatting over the chair. And then he was taking a huge dump, like into the airway box. And the person who found it was the registration clerk who had gone in to like ask him for his insurance card.
Oh my gosh.
And he's just like, and I run over, I was like, oh my God. And he goes, and I look, and he was like, I'm sorry, I didn't have any toilet paper. And of course, what did he do? It was like all over his hands, all over the wall, all over himself. Yeah, of course.
Because what else are you going to do with it?
What else are you going to do with it? I was like, I can't.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
And my nurse manager actually helped me like clean him up.
Well, that's like the best nurse manager ever.
I know. Yeah. And I was like, I'll never forget. I just kept telling her, I was like, I'll never forget their help. Thank you so much. Oh my God.
That's funny.
Yeah, because these airway boxes, they're like the tackle boxes. Like it was. I mean,
how does someone that big even sit on that?
I don't know.
Like I just think of the marks. Like And the worst part is that, at some point you had to fish the stuff out of there and decide what you're going to do with it.
Oh, no, I didn't. It's the resident's job to stock the airway box. So that was their problem.
Here's your airway box. It's got a little something extra in it for you.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That was the best.
That's hilarious.
That was the best. Then there was this one guy, he wrote on a glove box, the box of gloves. Uh-huh. He wrote in a ballpoint pen, my wife is trying to murder me with insulin, and then shoved it towards us when we were in there. And then we were like, oh my God, this guy, oh my God, shit, we got to get the forensic nurse examiner. We got to call the police. Oh my God, what do we do? Holy shit. And she goes, we convince her that she should go get something to eat, and we make her walk away. And as soon as she walks away, we get all the constables, everybody comes up, and we've got everybody. We go, okay, we're ready. We're here to protect you. We got you. Don't worry, we'll keep you safe. And he was like, that was a joke. I'm like, what?
Oh, no.
No. Yeah.
That wasn't serious.
Yeah. And as he was like, this is a joke, we turn around, and the wife is standing there with all this food. And she's like, I brought you food. And the constable goes, don't feed him. We're like, so stupid.
You're like, no, you can't joke about that shit. What's wrong with you?
Can't joke about that shit.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
All that excitement. You're like, and he's like, oh no, it's just a joke. I was just kidding.
It's a joke.
So
can't do that, bro.
One day when we were moving our old ER to our new ER, we had we tore down one of the nurses' stations. So they tear down one of the nurses' stations. There's shit everywhere. There's crap everywhere. And, we're kind of going through the rubble, and I see this little doorbell with a little battery. And I'm like, oh, what's this? And I was like, I don't know what it is. So I'm like, ding, 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 ding. So I'm and pressing it and going, ding, 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 ding. And it was just looking at me going, does that go to anything? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then everybody, the police, security, everybody shows up, and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? What's going on? We're like, nothing. What's going on with you? And they're like,
oh my God.
They're like, somebody pressed the panic button 10 times. We called the police. And we're like, oh. I'm standing there with the button in my hand all, I was all, I wanted to throw it to the side and be like, that's weird. I don't know how that happened. Of course, sitting there with my boss going, oh. I was like, hey, fellas, good drill. Good drill. You're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. That's funny.
That's so funny. Why wasn't that labeled though?
Right?
Right? What?
And it I don't know why it wasn't labeled. It's here I am sitting there playing with the doorbell thinking that it didn't go to anything because it was literally a doorbell and a battery. I'm like, what could that possibly go to? Well, we found out. Anyway, it was pretty hilarious.
I don't know. How does that happen when Jayco says that we can't have water, but you can just willy-nilly just throw a panic button all around?
Where is Jayco in all this? Because no one's heard from them.
Right? That's what I want to know. No, they did make one statement. They said that it was okay for nurses to wear N95s
right.
that they had from their homes, and that was the only thing they've said.
That's right. And they were just like, shit, we don't know. We're making all our shit up anyway.
Maybe that's the good thing that comes out of this. Maybe Jayco is like, sorry, yeah, we've been messing with you guys for 15 years. We're out now.
You know what? Have your Coke at the nurse's station. Nobody really cares. Y'all survived coronavirus. It's only the strong now. We're good. Okay, we've thinned the herd a little bit. Now, it's only the strong. You guys can have whatever you want at the nurse's station. That's what I think is going to happen.
I hope so. Donuts everywhere.
Donuts everywhere. Donuts for everybody.
Everybody.
What advice would you give a brand new emergency nurse going into the ER?
I think the biggest advice that I've learned, because I still feel new. I haven't been doing it in this 5 years, so I'm still new. I think the best advice is that don't forget that you're quite often in different ways the smartest person in the room. Because you're new, it means you haven't been screwed up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are probably the most important person in the room because you see things that other people bring unconscious bias to.
For everything.
Bias, yes, is so influential. The bias that you bring to the table runs like 90% of your brain. So when you're a new person, you haven't been soiled and tainted yet. And
That's true. It's true.
That's so important because you're going to see something about that critical patient that I might gloss over or I might not even see because I'm worried about XYZ because my critical care brain is exploding. But I'm thinking I'm seeing a zebra when really it's just a horse, right?
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing as a new nurse is like, don't forget that and make sure that you have to find a way to find your voice to speak up because there's going to be a lot of people in the room that are going to want to make you feel like you're the least important person in that room. And if you're in that environment, get out.
Yeah. Nothing kills me more than seeing somebody who like poo-poos on the students, like, you're just a baby. What do you know? And you're like, just stop.
Right.
Like that whole nurses eat their young thing is just, that needs to just go away.
It's not right. Because of what I just said, because that person that just came out of nursing school has the most up-to-date information. Their brain is used to going through everything before making a call. And they haven't, like I said, they're clean, right? They haven't been tainted or burdened yet with their bias, with their own clinical bias.
Yep, it's true.
So, and also if you're in maybe a managerial role or something like that, the most important person to ask of anything is the new person because of their perspective.
Yeah.
So, and also if your manager doesn't value input of a new person also, like that is not a great environment to be in because you have the most important voice on how things are really going, on how you can make it better, right? Because you have all these ideas. You've worked somewhere else or you've had a different kind of job that brings its unique perspective to how it works being a nurse. It's important. Your different experiences are so important.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the fresh eyes that come back and look through something and go like, this is all bullshit, right? You guys know that, right?
Right. Right.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. The last question I'm going to ask you is a question called 3 things. And I'm going to ask you to give me 3 things an ER nurse should always remember and 3 things they can just go ahead and forget.
Weren't those part of the 3 things?
They can be.
Yeah. I think, so the things that let's start with the 3 things you should always remember. I think 1 is remember that your voice is really important, that you have to find a way. If you have something to say, you got to say it because it can make or break the situation, like, especially if you're newer, it's so important. I think the other thing you got to remember is you've got to be humble and ask for help if you need it, because that's when things get bad, is when you're not asking for help with anything. I mean, you have to remember to be humble and ask for help, because if it's when you get cocky that mistakes get made.
It's true.
And you're never gonna know everything. You're not gonna know everything. So if you think you know the answer to everything, then there's a problem. There's something is wrong if you think you know the answer to everything. So if you're not asking for help, that means your patients, something is missing, because there's no way you can know everything. That's why we work together as teams, right? Like that's why we have consults and different disciplines. Like you can't know everything. So if you're not asking for help, your patient's not getting suboptimal care in some form, in some way. So make it about your patient. Say, if you don't feel comfortable saying, I don't know the answer to this, say instead, hey, do you think that there's something this patient can benefit from that they're not getting now? Because then that takes the onus off you. Maybe if you're a person that's really, you're like, I don't ask for help, I don't need it. Make it about the patient, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. and I think that's also something to remember. Is like, this ain't about you.
Yep.
This ain't about you.
It's not about you.
And it's not. And we forget that a lot. This is not about you. Remember that. It's not about you. You know?
It's true. And sometimes it's hard to forget. Like, we're the ones getting paid to be there, and we're being paid to take care of those patients. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Especially because sometimes we get so, I do it too. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this person's here for XYZ, or, oh my God, this is so annoying. Like, they're asking me for this or that, and the other thing. Like, it's not about you and how, if they're interrupting you doing something else or whatever. Like, we get so upset, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm trying to chart, the damn bell's going off again. Oh, it's not about you. There's a person, somebody's mother, somebody's aunt, sister, friend, worker is laying in that bed. Yeah, is laying there. They don't want to freaking be there either. They're not getting paid. You are. Nobody wants to be there, right? Like, it's not about you. It's about them. Just try to remember that. Like, at least you're not laying around in the hospital bed.
Yeah.
You have the privilege of being interrupted and serving them in a way, right? And I don't mean giving them food. I mean, you are providing them the service of their human dignity. Like, that's what our job. Our job is to serve others and keep their dignity intact.
Yeah.
So if you're finding yourself making it about you, at the end of the day, you're not really doing your job.
Absolutely.
And that's hard to hear. It's gonna be hard for some people to hear that. And I think it goes back to that whole, like, be humble, ask for help. If you need help, and it doesn't, like, with anything, help dealing with stuff, struggling mentally, emotionally, you got to ask.
Yep. Absolutely right. What are things they should forget?
I think you should forget kind of everything you knew before you walked through the door, in a way, because I think a lot of people, they go into emergency nursing after they've done something kind of like it, right? Like, they were a tech, or like myself, like I was an EMT. And I remember in nursing school, everyone was like, oh, you're going to work in the emergency department. And I was like, no way in hell, dude, I would never do that.
And look at you now.
Like, yeah, I know. And they're like, why? And I was like, well, because, like, I already know that. That's all I had. I don't want to do that. And I was like, I already know what I'm doing. I don't want to be, that's boring to me. I want to learn something new. So it's when you're on the nursing end, everything you knew about it, or you thought you knew about it, is completely, totally off what the reality of the situation is, right?
Yeah.
So if you go in there and you're like, I know what I'm doing,
I got this.
It's not even, it's not even close to being reality of what you really need to do to succeed and do right by your patient and, be a good nurse on different levels. Like, right. And in order to do that, you have to learn from the beginning. Like, you have to learn. And again, this goes right to what we're talking about. Like, you're biased, right? Like, when you come in, you're biased. If you think you've already done this, right? So as an EMT, like, it's totally different. Everything's different from being an EMT, from being a nurse.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell EMTs that all the time when they're going to nursing school, and they're like, oh, it's going to be easy. And I'm like, it's completely different. It's a completely different mindset.
Oh my God, it's totally different. And sometimes I think it makes it harder when I came in with that experience, because I was like, aren't you supposed to do this? And they're like, no.
Yeah, you're like,
oh, geez. Okay.
Like, oh, well, I thought I had all this shit figured out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would tell people when I would have like precepting nurses, that's what I would say. I'd be like, oh, what did you do before this? And they would say blankety blank. And I'd be like, great, like, forget all of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
Forget all of that.
Yeah. I wish someone had told me that. Everybody I told when I was like, I was an EMT, they were like, that's really great. You're awesome. You don't need any training. What? No.
No, it's not what that means. It's not what that means.
No.
What else should they forget?
Panic.
Okay.
It seems so arbitrary, though, to say, like, don't panic, right? Like, that's not really good advice. But, oh, man, they would just get so frustrated. I would say, don't forget to give yourself some grace, because it takes time to learn all this stuff. And when it's hard to learn it and you don't know, you panic, right? And then you spiral. So when I would say, like, it's okay, like, don't panic, like, just breathe, like, don't panic. We're going to breathe. It's going to be fine. You already know what to do. Like, they went, right? Like, when you're a new nurse, even though you're just coming in, like, you went to school, like, you know, deep down, like, you know what to do. That's what I would tell them all the time. I would say, just breathe. You already know what to do. Just think. You know what to do.
Yeah.
Don't forget that you already know what to do. You know, that's a good one. Don't forget that you already know what to do.
There you go. Now you just got to come up with one more.
Oh my God. Wasn't that a twofer?
No, it was a one-fer. This is the hardest question. This is the one that people are like, God.
This is the hardest question.
It's the hardest question.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I want to get across with anything, but it's a lot with nursing, is that, right? Like, you're precepting, there's someone with you all the time. They're right at your hip, and then they're slowly moving away. And then sometimes once that preceptor's gone, like, you're all you got for most of it, right?
Yeah.
And with all those patient interactions, everything, when you talk to patients, when you talk to the doctors, a lot of the times the ED is a team, but for all that everyday stuff, like, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's your license on the line, your personal practice. You have to go home at night and look yourself in the mirror and be able to and like what you see. That is so important.
Yeah, you're right, and that's deep, but you're absolutely right. I mean, ultimately, like, you're accountable for your own practice, and you're accountable for what you do or don't know. Right. Like, for the good or the bad.
Yeah, and part of that is like don't forget that patient that is annoying you, or that patient that is here for the 100,000th time this month, is still a person. And it might be funny in your department to refuse to give them a blanket, or it might be funny to let them sit in the waiting room longer because you know they're just there for a sandwich. But how are you going to look at yourself when you go to bed at night and you look in that mirror?
Did you listen?
Are you going to like what you see?
Did you listen to the episode with Kristen Klein yet?
I did not yet. No.
You got to listen to it. There's part 1 and part 2. Listen to part 2.
Yeah.
Listen to part 2. Like, because that's almost verbatim what she said.
No way.
Yeah, truly.
That's crazy.
Great minds think alike. So.
I think, but it's true, because I think there's a lot of times we forget that we're in the social business of people and their dignity. We forget that.
It's true.
So don't forget. Like don't forget. Like, why are you there? Why did you do this? Why are you nursing here? Why? Everyone says they want to help people. Well, do it. And when you go home, can you look at yourself and say, I did it okay today?
Yeah. It's all it matters.
It's really hard. That's the hardest part of our job, is dealing with the everyday stuff.
Yeah. And there's a lot of everyday stuff.
Yeah.
That's good. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm glad. I have fun too.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.